Imagine existence defined solely by physical contact. This is not just the skin surface registering texture, but a deep processing of every physical interaction. Proprioception, the sense of our body's position in space, would become the bedrock of spatial awareness, constantly informing us of limb orientation and muscle tension. Thermoception, the perception of temperature, would delineate environments, distinguishing a cold metal railing from a warm wooden surface, or the subtle heat radiating from another living being. Nociception, the perception of pain, would be a critical feedback mechanism, signaling potential harm and guiding physical boundaries. These intrinsic bodily senses, usually background players, would become the primary data streams, forming our entire subjective reality, where even the faintest air currents or ground vibrations carry significant information. Density, vibration frequency, and the nuanced resistance of objects against our fingertips would convey immense data, replacing visual forms and auditory cues entirely. A world experienced through touch would require a fundamentally different method for identifying and categorizing objects. Color, shape, and sound cues would be absent, leaving only tactile properties. A mental map would develop, charting not by visual landmarks, but by a sequence of textured pathways, varying pressures underfoot, and the specific thermal signature of different areas. Encountering a chair, for instance, would involve feeling its material, tracing its contours, determining its stability by pressure, and assessing its temperature, building a complex internal representation from these haptic inputs alone. Dynamic environments would challenge this mapping. A gust of wind would register as pressure changes against the skin, while the subtle tremors from a passing vehicle would propagate through the ground, offering kinetic information about movement and scale. The very air would become a canvas of information, its density, humidity, and flow patterns constantly informing us of our immediate surroundings and distant, unseen events. Social interaction in a purely tactile world would transcend simple handshakes, evolving into an intricate language of contact. The pressure, duration, and warmth of a touch would convey emotional states, differentiating a hesitant greeting from a firm reassurance. Communication would occur through varying skin-to-skin contact, perhaps developing a complex braille of emotion, where specific patterns of touch express sentiments far beyond words. Recognizing individuals would hinge on the unique tactile signature of their skin, the specific grip of their hand, or the way their body radiates heat, creating an intimate and deeply personal form of identification. Concepts like personal space would be defined not by visual distance, but by the subtle disturbances in air pressure created by another person's proximity or movement, a tactile boundary constantly being negotiated. Establishing trust and rapport would rely entirely on physical cues, where consistency in touch, gentle pressure, and the absence of jarring movements build relationships in a profoundly physical way. In a world without sight or sound, the perception of vastness or distance becomes profoundly recontextualized. Concepts like sky or ocean cannot be visually apprehended. Instead, the sky might be felt as the subtle, pervasive pressure of air, the shifting humidity, and the warmth of an unseen sun on the skin. An ocean might be known through its relentless rhythmic vibrations resonating through the ground, the spray of mist on the face, and the strong, persistent scent of salt carried by the wind. A towering mountain would be an incremental climb, a change in air pressure with altitude, and the feel of various rock formations underfoot. An accumulation of countless tactile experiences rather than a single imposing visual. The very notion of distance would be defined purely by the duration and effort of physical traversal, a journey measured in footsteps and the evolving sensory tapestry of contact, rather than a visual perspective shrinking into the horizon. This absence of visual or auditory markers forces an internal, embodied understanding of scale, where magnitude is experienced through the body's direct interaction with the environment over time. If touch were the exclusive gateway to reality, the human brain would undergo a radical reorganization, elevating the somatosensory cortex to unprecedented levels of processing power. This heightened sensitivity would allow for the detection of minute environmental changes, where subtle variations in air density, imperceptible to us, might become as informative as visual scenes. Imagine being able to discern the presence of an object not by direct contact, but by the minute disruption it causes in surrounding air currents, creating a haptic echolocation. This refined sense could enable complex tasks, like distinguishing the internal components of a machine purely by feeling its vibrations, or operating intricate interfaces solely through haptic feedback. The very concept of tools would evolve, instruments designed to extend and amplify tactile perception, allowing for an even deeper, more nuanced interaction with the physical world. The potential for such a somatosensory self implies a different kind of intelligence, one deeply rooted in the physics of contact, capable of perceiving and interacting with the world in ways we can only theorize, transforming the seemingly limited sense of touch into a boundless realm of information.